Hello and welcome to another roundtable focused on opportunities available for hotels to drive a more sustainable business model. This is part of our hospitality marketplace operations and sustainability series. And this time we are together with Marcel Hendrickx, the CEO founder of Horeca Sustainability Solutions. Hello, Marcel. How are you?
Good morning. I'm doing very well.
Welcome. Excellent. And we're also joined by Joe Hendrickx, who is a sustainability advisor at Horeca Sustainability Solutions, as well as a founder of Travel Without Plastic. Hello, Joe. How are you today?
Morning. Great, thank you. Nice to be here.
Nice to have you. Thank you very much for joining us. All right, well, let's just go straight in. Marcel, tell us a little bit about what you're trying to solve for hotels with Horeca Sustainability Solutions, and how do you help them become more sustainable? Perhaps a couple of the key projects you're working on. That would be great to start with.
But just to make a very short summary on where and how the journey started. In 2006, I was one of the first hotels gaining the Travel Life Gold Award in Africa. And since that day, I understood that sustainability is a topic which will raise higher and higher. And when we see what's happening in those days, I think it's something that a lot of tourists want to see and want to hear. And therefore, during the pandemic, I've decided to really put all my knowledge and my past experience as a hotel manager just to help out hotels just to go into not to go in the right direction, but to go with the right options to be able to be more sustainable, but also more profitable. Because often people talk about sustainability, people think about extra cost, when in fact it can be a win-win, helping and moving things forward socially, environmentally, but also with your customer, bring a positive way in what we are talking every single day, or calling the decarbonizations of the tourism industry. And I think it's sometimes it's opened the eyes, but also giving a small hand at the right place to the right manager or the right owner to be able to do it. I think nothing is complicated. It's simply a fact of willingness and not trying to pretend that guest satisfaction will decrease. No, it's a combined action.
Absolutely. I think one of the key areas that you focus on is helping hospitality reduce waste at source, but also minimizing a lot of the operating costs that are involved there. And Joe, just going a little bit over to you, tell us a little bit about, the very critical angle that you tackle for hotels, especially as they strive to be more compliant with sustainability requirements, particularly as it pertains to contracting with new partners such as tour operators. What type of actions, what type of incentives, as well as how do you help hotels, go through these projects of minimizing and eliminating single-use plastic?
Yeah, so as Marcel has a focus on food waste prevention and transformation, I look at plastics, single-use plastics in particular. And I've worked on that topic since 2011, actually, when we worked with a number of hotels back in Cyprus to eliminate single-use plastics then. And it was in 2017 when that just became a total focus for me. Without much strategy, I must admit, in the beginning, it was just really getting so frustrated at the amount of single-use plastic that I saw in hotels, and knowing from work that I'd done already that you can actually do things in a different way, and you can still tick the health and safety box, you can still tick the quality box, and in some cases you can save money. So what we help hotels to do really is to understand how much single-use plastic they're getting through, because a lot of the times they don't measure that. And you'll know yourself, if you don't measure something, then you can't really know if you're making a difference. So what we set the hotels as a task when we first start to work with them is a baseline. And it's astonishing, really, when you see how much single-use plastic a hotel can consume in a year. So we get them to look at their cost on one side and the consumption. And then we'll identify what fits in maybe a top 10. So what's highlighted in the top 10 cost and the top 10 consumption. And then they would be the single-use plastics that we would help them to work on. So we set a strategy with them, if you like, to help them to prioritize, see what it is that they can do that's directly within their influence, what they might need some additional help with, and to make sure that they're doing all that with some standard operating procedures that keep things as safe and hygienic as they need to be, but also tick that quality box. And a lot of the time we can actually save money as well. I often say to people, your approach, you know, it depends on how you approach it, whether you're going to save money or not. Plastic is very, very cheap. So we don't lead on the cost saving. It's more the reputational impact, to be honest. And a lot of hotels are seeing now that they need to do more in this area. It's something that's very visible. It's something they can act on very easily. And I think that the customers really want to see this. So it's very important that they take it seriously.
Absolutely. And I think one of the things that you mentioned there is being able to measure. And I think this is where digitalization, many aspects of the business, is going to be so important. I think we have to take a little bit of a step back when it comes to implementing sustainability strategies, to understand more of a holistic concept and go a little bit beyond maybe targeting to reduce energy bills and consider more of the role of that digitalization, this whole process, effectively to help you, you know, transform and also lead a much more clear strategy around sustainability. And one of the key layers that we work through from a digitalization and technology standpoint, we see as, you know, working through this consulting agreements is sustainable asset management, and how it really has to become the first pillar of that foundation to drive a much more sustainable operation, but also ultimately reduce costs where you can, so to really become more profitable. And one of the basic requirements is, you know, being able to measure and understand those KPIs in real time, so you can ultimately improve the experience of the guests, but also the corporate reputation, as Joe's highlighted. And I think that's where a lot of the processes around the back office, and, you know, that very much tying into the compliance, but also the quality and the standards, you know, they're all related and connected at asset level. And you know, being able to really drive that KPI at operational level to see how, if you are measuring and if you are able to set those KPIs in the various departments, you can see what impact it has ultimately on the guest experience levels and the GOP. And one of the key areas around digitalization there sits to really identify where those greenhouse gas emissions hotspots are, and that, you know, being able to calculate that carbon footprint in real time from there to understand, well, how much energy am I consuming, and how much of that is also refrigerant gases and water and waste, and really from there, you'd be in a much better position to determine how am I going to be leading and directing my sustainability strategy, but ultimately, what solutions can I implement to improve my energy consumption, reduce that impact on the planet. So I think this is kind of leading into you, Marcel. I'd like to highlight some of the key benefits that you see in the work that you do with hotels to implement the Horeca sustainability solutions, and also I think let's highlight some of those solutions, but also what sort of ROIs can hotels expect from implementing such solutions into the business.
I can maybe step first in a very, very, I would say, sarcastic question. Is that why hoteliers and owners don't like to know the truth? And sometimes it comes back to, like we say, the baseline to know where you are and from where you started is the most important. Yes, true. But why are people always so scared about knowing the truth? They've been working in a similar system for 50 years. Why changing? Why would they ask to say, okay, we've got to be better? No, if we've got to be better, is to accept they were worse. So I think it comes back to the willingness, and as soon as you've got the willingness, the ROI comes straight away. Food waste reduction, the investment on checking what you're doing day to day on your waste generated when you produce food in a kitchen. The return on investment is less than 2 months. You start making money after 2 months. And just to top up some figures, 500 covers a day after 1 year, if you do it well, you can generate a saving around 100,000 euro. It's a 6-figure that we can, and there's been obvious proof of that. But when you talk about that, people say, yeah, but so basically we were wrong before. So why doing it? We are scared to upset people, or do we have the right people doing it? And that's why we come in by saying, let's go hand in hand to do it with you. And that's first is the reduction side up front, and after, because they still the zero kitchen, the zero waste kitchen does not exist in theory. Let's do something with that waste, because the waste has a value first, the waste has an energy value second. So why not using the waste, putting it into a biodigester, for example, and creating your own gas? Why are you going to carry on paying for your gas when you produce gas with the waste of your kitchen in preparation, during a buffet time, and during and after with all the returns of the plate? You can produce enough gas to run your kitchen completely green. When I say green, you don't pay for your gas. And then, of course, return on investment of a machine like that, if you do it in a clever way, 2 years, no max. Anyone would say, yes, why not? And still, you still have the question mark by, why would I change from fossil energy to a green energy? It's again the same question, to say to be scared of the unknown, and also to be scared by, oh, maybe we were wrong before, why changing? And this attitude is what is often coming the most, I would say, the most obvious. You've got to convince them that going sustainable, it's a win-win with your customer, with your image, with everything, with your money and your return on investment. And that is the key.
And I think, sorry, go ahead, John.
The mindset work that you have to do to get this change, because when Marcel speaks about those very quick returns on investment, it can still be really difficult to get people to say, right, let's get started. And it is a little bit of what he said. It's nobody wants to say it's not that people have been doing it wrong for a long time. We didn't necessarily have those solutions straight away. The technology that we've got today wasn't necessarily around on a decentralized scale in the way that it is now a few years ago. So I think that's a key thing. The technology is always developing, and we need people to keep up to date with that and really feel that it's an ally rather than something that's going against them. But that mindset work to really get through, no matter how good the digitalization is or the tech is, somebody somewhere has got to decide that they're going to use it. And I think this is one of the key things that when we're working with any businesses, we really find it quite difficult to overcome. And it's different in different areas of the world as well. I mean, we can do this globally because it's a solution that can work from anywhere. Marcel can do the food waste prevention from sitting at home at his desk and helping hotels to get through it no matter where they are in the world. He did that recently with Mauritius. And there are some areas of the world where you see they really are pro technology and pro digitalization, and some areas of the world where it really just kind of costs them to get started. So I think we need to do our best in sustainability to help people to overcome that and get started and enjoy those benefits quickly.
I think it's a lot of education there needed, right, to shift that mindset, and also giving visibility to the bigger problem, global problems such as waste, and particularly food waste, right, because it's the largest greenhouse gas emitter at the end of the day, that if we're not really conscious of, I mean, a third of world's food, right, goes to waste, and 70% of that we could actually use. So preventing and transforming is obviously a huge element of that strategy. But if we can actually try to pass that food onwards to at a reduced cost, just to make sure that it is consumed, because ultimately when it lands in the landfill, it just releases all that, all those methane that ultimately is so critical, and it's much worse than even carbon dioxide. So I think it's really educating and making businesses understand that they're part of the solution. They have to act together to be able to create a much more sustainable business model for everyone to work in. I think, Joe, perhaps from your side, from the projects that you're working with, Travel Without Plastic, what sort of projects would you highlight there, and what sort of ROIs hotels could expect also when we talk about these projects?
Yeah, as I said before, plastic isn't it. We don't lead on cost saving because it is so cheap. However, a lot of the concerns that we hear from hotels, for instance, are it's going to cost me money to take away single-use plastic. And this is normally because of how they decide to approach it. So most hotels are still in this trend of we must replace single-use plastic with single-use something else, rather than actually thinking through, okay, do we actually need that plastic item in the first place? I mean, unbelievably, I can travel to hotels still today and find the little plastic thing across the toilet that tells you it's clean. All of the miniature toiletries, you know, the plastic comb that nobody is going to use. And me and you ever going to use that comb, Christina, on our hair? Never. There are things in there that have been there for 30 years. And so again, it's like Marcel says, why change something? It's almost like, you know, saying that you've been doing it wrong. But actually, there's about 15% of the single-use plastics in hotels that are just used because of habit, or because we've always done it that way. So there are some savings there if they're just cut out completely. And from the work that we've done, we can see that the guests really don't mind. We started a project 3 years ago in Mallorca. We've just finished it at the end of this year. And at the very, very beginning, we did some work with guests in the hotels, asking them what they would think if the hotel removed, for instance, slippers. Because every hotel manager will say to us, we can't take the slippers away. We can't. The guests would complain. So one of the things we try to understand, firstly, is rather than imagine what the guests might do, actually try to find out. And when we spoke to guests at the beginning of that project, about 80% of them said, we'd be quite happy to see the slippers go. You know, we don't use them. We don't even know why hotels bother with them. So a lot of the time, this we can't do something is in the head, if you like, again, down to this, you know, the mentality and the willingness to engage with doing something different. So if we try to look at taking away, eliminating what's not necessary in the first place, and actually asking yourself, be a critical friend, maybe is a better way to put it, to your business. You know, ask yourself in a nice way, do we really need this, and could we do without it? Could whatever it is that needs to be replaced with a refillable or a reusable alternative instead? And that's where we help with standard operating procedures for that. And we do a lot of work on guest communications so that the hotels don't feel as if they're impacting on the guest experience in any way. But also some of those return or those refillable and reusable options, that's where you get a really good return on investment. So if you look at switching out plastic bottles of water, for instance, instead of going to a glass bottle, which is then maybe returned to the supplier and it comes back to you, but you've got all of the emissions associated with that transport, for instance, that if you actually filter your own water on site, use a filtering system and bottle that water, so those glass bottles just stay on the premises. I mean, the savings, we looked at this with a hotel in Ibiza that was part of our project, they're saving 21,000 euros a year just by switching from plastic bottles to having water that guests refill.
So, Joe, I think a few very interesting elements that you've highlighted there, particularly around the opportunities available for hotels to remove plastic, to remove single use, and look at more sustainable options. What other elements would you say are key within that process?
I think really it's helping the staff that are working in the hotel to understand that it's not necessarily going to impact their workload. that things may need to change slightly in the operation, but one of the things that we really try to do is not add additional workload for staff. And a lot of the time, once you've got some new procedures in place, it can actually limit the workload, it can reduce it, which really helps with the buy-in. But the other thing is really looking at those customer communications and putting across those messages in different touch points. So before people travel, if hotels look at what's on their website, what are they posting on their social media, have they got any e-newsletters where they could start to tell their customers about what they're doing really well. So for instance, if they have introduced water filtration on site, some of those emails could be around, you travel with your own bottle, you can fill up for free in our hotel. You can start to give those messages before guests actually get to the site. But also some of the work that we do around, particularly when we're switching from single-use miniature shampoos and those sorts of things to refillables. If hotels are working with local companies that do that, then we're telling that story. We're creating like little communications cubes that can actually sit on the bathroom shelf. And it talks about how we're working together with local businesses, how it's a kilometre zero business that's supporting, what the impacts are. So people actually go away from there and think, do you know what? I'm really glad I booked to stay at this hotel. Not only are they reducing single-use plastic, but they're choosing to work with local companies to do that as well. So it's kind of getting that whole feel-good factor, if you like, and getting it into the company's DNA, really making it part of what they want to do, but very importantly, as an overall waste reduction exercise. So not doing that, replace single-use for single-use something else, but looking at it in the whole realm of waste reduction from that waste reduction hierarchy perspective.
I can quickly step into another remark concerning waste and food waste. And the communication aspect is very, very important. If you just put, for example, a small message near your buffet, the name of the chef who present the food, if you put a picture of the chef next to the buffet and saying, the chef welcome you, and please, first, here are the hot plates that you can use to keep my food hot, and just giving the sense of responsibility and putting a human face behind, changed also very much the attitude of the people. People needs to know, people needs to share, people needs to learn. And as a joke, it's not exactly a joke, but often during an holiday, people don't have a lot to talk between each other because there is not much of specific new things to talk about. Give them the chance to talk about something sustainable, local, with a face, with an attitude. They will enjoy their holiday. At the end, the tourism industry is just to support people with a smile and just give them a positive attitude towards what is happening on Earth, what the negative aspect of tourism can be, by trying to bring them in a positive attitude. Because without the help of the tourist and the acceptance of the tourist himself, it will be difficult to change everything in the industry, because at the end, tourists pay for their holiday, pay for their stay, and we've got to respect that. And that's why the whole sustainability approach has to be very, I would say, very subtle and well thought after, with the proper communication for everyone to understand what's going on.
Absolutely. And also there's so many incentives there for hotels to consider in integrating that sustainability much deeper into their business model, because ultimately, if they do well, it also attracts the right clients, it attracts the right communication, the right press, but also it makes them a lot more attractive to investors and gives them facilities to become a lot more competitive, right, when accessing funds, for instance, to help their business. And last but not least, it's so important, I think, in helping retain talent, because more and more people are looking for organizations that are respectful with the environmental issues and are really taking a step forward, both from an environmental perspective, but also, a sort of a more extended ESG criteria where they look at, the social and the governance aspects. And also investors are certainly very, very focused on that, and they're incorporating all of those elements, all of those ESG elements, and all the decisions that they're taking, and also to determine as non-financial factors whether there are material risks for them to invest in a hotel that's not sustainable, and what are those growth opportunities as well. I think all in all is about how do we align all the work that we do around sustainability within our brand, how do we communicate that, and how do we make sure that those guests that are looking for a much more sustainable stay, and we've seen a lot of the surveys that were done recently by some of the large OTAs like Booking.com, but also other industry bodies. Over 70 to 80% of consumers now care deeply about sustainability, and they are looking for more sustainable solutions. So we sort of want to highlight to hotels it's really important to display those practices and make it a distinctive attribute. And I think you have to show that you're taking considerable steps to become a much more sustainable business, but also communicate that, as you both are highlighting, effectively. For me, it was a brilliant conversation. Thank you very much for all the brilliant insights that you've shared with us today. Hopefully that was useful for all of our viewers, and I'd like to thank you. And any closing thoughts from either of you?
Make money with your waste, and that's it.
I'll leave that to Marcel. Yeah, definitely. I think see waste as a resource, and don't wait to start. Do you know what I mean? Just get started. Don't fall at the first hurdle. Keep going. It's definitely the right path to be on.
Absolutely. Well, thank you very much, both.